So I think we're ready whenever you are.
I'm ready as well. So we'll call the meeting to order, the open council meeting for October 25th, 2021. With that, we'll pass it to the clerk to get things started.
Great, thank you. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, there is not a supplementary agenda this evening. I have not received any disclosures of pecuniary interest for open session agenda, and there are no deputations this evening. Therefore, we'll move into the consent agenda. So this evening, the following reports have been pulled. Item 13B, the minutes of the Public Library Board by Councillor Finn. Item 15A, the Chatham-Kent Public Library Annual Report. There is a presentation and Councillor Oche and Councillor Pinchino wish to speak to it. Item 16A, there is a presentation on the corporate information management. Item 18A, the Medivive 2020 operational review has been pulled by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Thompson. Item 20D, the application for site plan control for Coatsworth Road in Romney is pulled by Councillor Oche. Item 21C, the Wallaceburg Bridge and 3rd Street Bridge update is pulled by Councillor Carmen McGregor. Item 22A, property taxes of the Wheatley evacuation zone is pulled by Councillor Harrigan. And item 22E, the motion of Councillor Sakachi for the grant of the Blenheim Senior Center is pulled by Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Latimer. Therefore, the following reports will be approved in the consent agenda. Items 12A, B, items 13A, C, D, E, item 14A, B, 15B, 16B, C, D, E, item 17A, 19A, B, C, D, E, item 20A, B, C, E, 21A, B, D, and 22B, C, and D. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Finn, did you have a question?
Yes, mine was supposed to be 15A. Sorry, Judy, not 13B. The one I wanted pulled.
Okay, no problem. We will add 13B back into the consent agenda, and we'll make note of that in the minutes. And 15A has already been pulled, so that's good.
Okay, with that, Councillor McGrail and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
Sure, I'll move that.
Seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
So the trend here this evening is
Just waiting for one more vote, Council. Everyone just please check to see if the submit worked. Okay, all votes are in and motion passes.
Okay, we'll go to item 15, Community Human Services.
15A, Chatham-Kent Public Library Annual Report 2020. We have a presentation by Sarah Hart-Coatsworth, Manager of Marketing, Outreach and Programs.
See my screen?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of council and community members, Chatham-Kent Public Library is pleased to share highlights from its annual report 2020 this evening. My name is Sarah Hart-Coatsworth and I am the Manager of Marketing, Outreach and Programs at CKPL. We're thankful to have the opportunity to keep everyone informed about library services and to celebrate our successes over the past year. Why is my slide not? Sorry about that. CKPL worked hard to ensure residents could access the essential library services that could be offered safely during the pandemic. By loosening parameters to create virtual cards while library buildings were closed, CKPL ensured that more residents retained access to CKPL's virtual library during the pandemic. Staffers ensured that patron library cards would not expire during the closure, that fines were waived, and CKPL's virtual library remained online so that patrons retained access. In 2020, CKPL found new ways to make its physical collections available to you. 343,351 items were borrowed through curbside service, bags of books, and subscription service from 11 branches. CKPL is here for patrons. The virtual library is available 24/7 with a library card and an internet connection. CKPL's online resources became essential while library branches were closed and residents were staying home. CK residents downloaded a record number, 266,372 items in 2020 from digital platforms like Hoopla and Libby. CKPL patrons also enjoyed streaming films through CKPL's virtual library platform called Canopy. That was to the tune of 218,000 minutes of streaming. CKPL has an active user base of 30,465. In 2020, CKPL created 1,942 new cards, including 569 virtual cards for access to the virtual library. In 2020, patrons made 93,812 visits to CKPL branches. Most of these visits were during curbside service. Patrons were so thankful that CKPL could offer curbside service and that it was quick and easy and above all, safe. CKPL's online catalog at search.ckpl.ca makes it easy to search, find, and place holds on library items. Patrons can pick up items at their local branch at their convenience. CK residents or library staff who are helping them placed 123,294 holds in 2020. CKPL launched Ask CKPL, a service that increased access by allowing residents to reach library staff by phone, email, text, and Facebook chat. CKPL has always acknowledged the importance of meeting people where they are, and the launch of this service has increased channels of communication and made the public library more accessible and readily available to people. Through Ask CKPL, 1,689 questions were answered between October and December, and across the system, 46,830 questions were answered by library staff throughout 2020. Patrons have always embraced CKPL's programming and tell us they want more. In 2020, library staff initiated virtual programming, and that was a first for CKPL. Lit videos for our youngest patrons, virtual trivia nights for adults and families, and many grab and go craft kits were offered through curbside service. You can visit CKPL's YouTube channel to see Lit Bits, Crafternoon to Go videos, and lots of quick how-to videos to help patrons access library resources and services. In-person programming and outreach were canceled during the pandemic, and CKPL is beginning now to relaunch in-person programming. In 2020, library staff offered 378 programs in person before March 2020, and then virtually or through grab and go at curbside service after that. CKPL staffers do a lot of outreach, letting the community know what programs and services the library offers and opening their eyes to new resources that they might enjoy. In the last 18 months, many have recognized the essential nature of the services offered by public libraries, which are critical to the mental health, well-being, and educational needs of community members. I thank you for your time this evening. If council has any questions, I'd be happy to address them now.
We have a few questions. Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Pinsino, then followed by Councillor Latimer, then Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I'd like to thank you for a very good report and great numbers during a pandemic. And secondly, I would just like to comment on the fact that the situation we have in Wheatley, and you have gone and opened a out of library, which is excellent. And I know the people in Wheatley are quite happy that you did this, and as well as Councillor Harrigan and myself. So I'd just like to thank you very much for doing this. I know it's a lot of hard work, and you did an excellent job. So thank you very much.
Councillor Pinsino, followed by Councillor Latimer.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Through you to Sarah, how are the small branches doing right now, Sarah?
Thanks for your question, Councillor Pinsino. Through you to the Mayor. The small branches are Bothwell, Highgate, Merlin, Thamesville, and you just heard a little bit about Wheatley. They're open and they're operating at their full regular hours at the moment. Staff have been doing extremely well to help keep up the usage in those branches, and of course our community support there is quite strong, so those branches are doing well. We've had wonderful feedback from the community about how grateful they are that their libraries are open and that they can have full and safe access to the libraries at this point.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that they had a bit of a break. Now they appreciate it more, I think. And by the way, the writing on the walls with the duct tape, the other walls, that looks awesome. Been a lot of people commenting on that. So I think that was a great idea.
Yes, I think that new art project that we're doing right now, Let's Talk Library CK, has created some buzz, and we're really excited about it as well. If you're interested in seeing more of that, you can drive around and check out the branches, but you can also go to our website at kpl.ca/Let's Talk Library CK, and you can see all the artwork there and also some explanation of the project going forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Sarah. I wanted, along with the Let's Talk Library CK, I wondered if you could give us some more examples about how Chatham-Kent Public Library lets people know about the good work the Chatham-Kent Public Library are doing. Thanks for your question, Councillor Latimer. Through you to the Mayor. CKPL shares information in a lot of different ways, and I'm always open to new ideas if anyone has any suggestions. We of course do media releases and communicate with media and with council that way. On our website, of course, as I've mentioned, ckpl.ca, where we share all of our upcoming programs and as I said, our projects like Let's Talk Library CK. We have a social media presence on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, as I mentioned. So those are a great place to follow us to learn upcoming information and all the up-to-date information. Those channels were really useful to us during the pandemic to make sure our patrons were clear on when we were open and where we were open. So that was really helpful, and we gained a lot of followers during that time. We do e-newsletters, so you can sign up for e-newsletters to learn about our new books, or DVDs to learn about our programming, to access specific collections, newsletters that you're interested in. We also do e-blasts, so we can message our patrons by email. So one of the new e-blasts we did this year was we sent our annual report by an e-blast. And so that was pretty popular. And then we could link directly to the examples of things we were working on. So we create promotions in-house, of course, posters, bookmarks. We have TV monitors that we can display things to. As I referred to, we have Ask CKPL. So we are sharing information through phone, text, email, and on our social media. We have done some calling of our patrons to check in with them, make sure they know that library services are available, and just to touch base with them to see if there's anything we can offer them. those are just some of the things, some of the ways we share good news. Of course, our staff are also really great at letting our patrons know the things that we think that they'd be interested in. So that's another really huge help for us in spreading the word.
Thank you, Sarah, for describing all those ways that truly libraries are community lifelines, especially across the last year and a half with the community isolation. The staff creativity has excelled in the programming and pivoting, and it's been very, very much appreciated by our community at large. I want to thank the whole library team for always sharing their passion for literature and always working to enhance community engagement, support, and programming. Well done. And thank you for the presentation again, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Latimer. I'll pass that on.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Worship. Just one question. First, thank you for the report, and everybody I have spoken to are thankful for everything the staff has done for the last year and a half, making sure that the access to the stuff at the library has been disrupted as minimal as possible. One question I have been asked was about the community navigators and if they are in fact back in the library offering services and assistance.
Great question, Councillor Finn. Through you to the mayor. We are happy to report that the community navigators are those are our partners through employment and social services. They are back in the libraries. They primarily are working in the Chatham and Wallaceburg branches, offering appointments both in person and virtually, and are available as needed at all of our 11 locations to help the community. So yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation and the report. I especially really appreciated the infographics at the end of the report to council. During 2020, we saw, as the report mentions, that 12-week shutdown of library services. Can you share with council a bit of how that impacted our ability to serve our community, in particular the most vulnerable, and then how the library has shifted as a result of some of those learnings from the pandemic?
Well, that's a good question, Councillor Harrigan. Thank you. Through you to the mayor. We worked hard, as I mentioned in the annual report, to retain the services that we could. So when the building was closed, we were able to support virtual access to the library through our virtual library, and we did make some changes to our the back end of our system, essentially, so that people would retain access. Library cards wouldn't expire. But if you don't have an internet connection at home, or you didn't have a library card, access was definitely more difficult. I think with our vulnerable populations, we know that they appreciate the library space that they're welcome into, that they can use for a warm place, for a cool place, for a place to rest and feel safe. That unfortunately we couldn't offer during that time. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's just the experience that the library provides, and certainly those lessons that we learned from COVID show us that the library is more than just a place to learn, right? It's a place to share community and to grow. And I also just wanted to shout out the home service program that I saw with over 9,000 deliveries last year. I thought was really just a fabulous number. I was personally surprised by that. So kudos to all the library staff in the creative ways, and thank you for continuing to make safe spaces for all members of our CK community.
Thank you, Councillor Harrigan.
Thanks so much for the report. With that, we'll move on to item 16, corporate services.
16A, corporate information management. Mr. Mayor, this evening we have a presentation by Nina Carter. Nina Carter is the president and owner of Information Professionals, a management consulting firm founded in 1988. They provide advisory services pertaining to information governance and compliance programs, policies, procedures, and systems. Nina herself is a career records manager She has 25 plus years in experience in planning and implementing the electronic document records management solutions. She has 20 years plus in developing subject, numeric, and function-based classification schemes, and has a number of public sector customers throughout North America. She's focused on local government strategies and planning across North America with over 250 municipal customers in Canada. So welcome, Nina. And Nina and I will be presenting a short presentation this evening to Council on information management assessment.
Thank you very much, Judy. How's my volume?
Fine.
Great, thank
It's
you so
perfect.
much.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to first start by thanking you for this opportunity to present to you this afternoon. So the topic of our presentation is to, as Judy mentioned, present the objectives and the outcomes of our engagement. Next slide, please. Imagine a world, next slide, where despite the plethora of technologies that we have access to, we still create volumes and volumes of paper documents. Next slide.
Yes, you do.
And then imagine a world where we spend a lot of time searching not just for documents, but the right version of a document. Next slide. Imagine a world where we all have different naming conventions for either the title of a document or yet again, the version of those documents. And next, last slide. And then imagine a world where we have access to so many technologies, we store copies of documents in multiple locations, just in case. It's not hard to imagine this world because this is the world we live in today. Next slide. The scope of the engagement that the information professionals was engaged to complete was to complete an information management current state assessment, which consisted of an analyzing CK's records management program. So we analyzed your policies, procedures, bylaws related to records management. We also worked with IT staff and the project team to take a deeper dive look into CK Central and CK's current use of Microsoft 365. In addition, by comparing CK against municipal best practices, we put forward some recommendations for your consideration, and then we defined a high-level strategy and plan. Next slide. In terms of the project governance, these are the members of our steering committee, with at the very bottom there, Jean and Joanne as my direct points of contact throughout the engagement. Next slide. So once again, the analysis was completed on policies, procedures, and CK's IT strategy. There were 25 divisional interviews completed with 130 participants. More than 90 responses were received to our online survey, essentially asking questions related to where is information being managed. And then we had project meetings on a weekly, sometimes more than once a week basis. Next slide. Our observations are as followed. So absence of defined information management program that includes the management of both digital and paper documents. So if you can imagine, our world has been through quite a bit in the last year and a half. And throughout those interviews, we definitely noticed that divisions are more and more transforming or managing digital content as opposed to paper-based documents. Divisions, as a result of that, have developed their own workaround solutions to managing information. As we create more and more information and have access to so many different places to store it, divisions have worked really hard to define their own ways for how to manage information effectively. There is an absence of a corporate-wide IMIT strategy and plan. So I know CK Central has an IT strategy and plan, but there really is a requirement for both information management and technology. CK Central, so CK Central is an intranet solution based on SharePoint, but we did notice that there is missing a taxonomy. And unfortunately, that's the one thing that's going to ensure the successful management and searching of content within SharePoint. Information management in Microsoft 365, governance, support, and training needs to be better defined. And in fact, we recommend that some committees be put together to really work towards defining what is the current use of Microsoft 365 and that future use, and what can CK Central deliver in a timely manner. We did notice that there is an absence of information management resources, and our recommendation is that CK considers engaging a manager to manage both privacy and information management, and 2 information management specialists to assist the divisions across Chatham-Kent to improve information management. Next slide, please. So as a result of our observations, these are the risks that Chatham-Kent faces. So currently there is a non-compliance with applicable legislation, which governs how long and which information needs to be retained. There's a potential for loss or theft of vital information. So if you don't know where your information is, personal information to that end, it's hard to put in place the measures to protect it. Inconsistent information management practices leads to duplication, and that certainly exists across Chatham-Kent. The challenge with duplication is which version is the version I should be using to make my decisions. As a result of that, there is an inability to effectively support litigation or access to information requests. So Judy's office does a fantastic job with that, but with all of the versions of documents that exist across Chatham-Kent, that makes it far more challenging than it needs to be. The inability to ensure protection of information from unauthorized access. Again, when information is stored in multiple locations and in different ways, it's really hard to make sure that those who should not have access to it don't. One other thing that we observed during our interviews is that when an employee moves from one department to another, sometimes their access to that previous department isn't always done so in a timely manner. And then lastly, inefficient search and retrieval of information in a timely manner to support effective decision making. This was something that was consistent across all of the interviews that were conducted. Generally speaking, a lot of time is being spent to search for information to support their day-to-day work. Next slide, please. So what are the municipal trends from a records management perspective? Well, firstly, content and collaboration platforms, such as the one that Chatham-Kent already owns, to support business and technical requirements and work remotely is common. So SharePoint Online is the leading platform across municipalities for information management. Solution architecture to support automated records classification, declaration, and disposition. So in the information management industry, we've almost given up trying to convince people to really understand the space of information management. So as a result, we've come up with ways to automate it. And that really ensures, again, that information is being managed effectively. Information management solutions to provide best of breed lifecycle management of electronic records and managed records in various repositories. So there's a concept called federated records management, which means that you have one of the technologies in place already to be able to manage information regardless of where it's located. So no matter what technology you're using, you have the ability to work towards developing a best of breed lifecycle management of electronic records. Automation of key line of business processes is definitely a municipal trend. Almost every single one of our customers wants to start with that. And essentially that is about automating things like review and approval of business expenses, let's say. And then lastly, ongoing training and change management support. So technology certainly continues to advance, but one thing that we find is being or is receiving much more attention is that ongoing training and change management. So boots on the ground. So this goes back to that recommendation for additional resources. You really need that to support the divisions changing the way that they work and the way that they use the technologies they have access to. Next slide. So our roadmap, if you had the opportunity to look at the strategy and plan, is as follows. So you've checked that first one off your list. You've conducted a current state assessment of your IM practices. Then we do suggest that you build that roadmap from today forward. You can't always go back and fix absolutely everything, and we're not aiming for perfection. We're really looking to just move forward again. An IM and IT shared roadmap. So those two teams need to work super close together to make sure that those objectives are realized, and focus on the end user experience. If it's easy to use and people understand it, in my experience, you will be successful. Define your solution requirements, keeping the end user in mind always. Sometimes that old adage of build it, they will come doesn't work, right? We've abolished that kind of approach to implementing technologies. The other thing is number 6 there, we recommend considering migration versus integration. So really think and plan the migration in terms of how do we move away from using things like network drives and other technologies to really leveraging the investment that you've already made in Microsoft 365, and consider a phased rollout. Since Chatham-Kent is such a large municipality, this type of project unfortunately is not going to be like turning a light on or off. You're going to need to plan a phased rollout and apply governance last. So this is actually a really important recommendation because a lot of our clients rather try to turn governance on from day one. And what we find is it's actually better to create your solution and get the users onboarded and then look at applying governance, meaning those records retention periods after the fact. Next slide, please. And this is for Judy, I think. Judy, are you
Great.
presenting this slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Nina. So Council, this is just an overview of the project and budget summary. And so as you can see, we anticipate this will be a 3-year project to accomplish everything that Nina has said in her plan. You know, at amalgamation time, we have amalgamated 23 former municipalities' paper documents, and we're in a good spot there. We need to spend just as much time and efforts in our electronic records. So we have a plan over a 3-year time period. With that comes cost. And as Council may recall, over the past 4 years during budget deliberations, the capital budget had $200,000 set aside for electronic records management. And 3 out of the 4 years, Council had approved those request, and therefore we have a reserve of 600,000 and less the needs assessment that we've paid for Nina's time and efforts. And therefore in the reserve under year 1, you'll see that we still have $525,000 that we're able to put towards the project now. The remaining, and what you see in these charts here in 2022, we will be at budget time asking for a base request. Nina had outlined that there were 3 FTEs that seem to be what our size of municipality requires in order to do this project. We would be coming forward at budget time, and we have kind of come up with a plan of asking for 2 FTEs at that time and 1 FTE under a supplemental to complete the project. And after that 3-year project, we can determine whether that 3rd FTE is required or just able to get us through the project time. So that's just an outline of what was in the report of what we anticipate bringing forward at budget time for your consideration. Next slide, please. The final slide is the recommendations that you see in the report. So tonight we are simply asking that you accept the information management assessment strategy and plan that was completed by Nina Carter and her organization. And then number 2 and 3 is forwarding the request that we have for the 3 FTEs and the additional supplementary money that is required on top of what's already being saved to complete this project. And that would be brought forward for your consideration during the 2022 budget deliberations. And Mr. Mayor, that is the end of our presentation.
Councillor B. McGregor and Councillor Sakatchi, I get you to move the recommendations, please.
I'll move the recommendation.
Happy to second that, Mayor Caniff.
All right, seeing no questions, we can move on to item.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, you need to have a vote on this one for the recommendations.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I apologize. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote.
Still waiting for 2 more councillors. 1 more councillor, please. Okay, still missing 1. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 15-2.
We'll move to item 18, Fire and Emergency Services.
18A, Medivh 2020 Operational Review.
Okay, this is an information report, and we have a couple councillors who would like to ask questions. Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you through the mayor. I wondered, my first couple of questions I think would be for Chief Case, and then if Don McClellan is available, I have a third question for him. Chief Case, I wondered, in option 1 in this report, it says increasing a total of 15,600 staff hours annually. I'm assuming this would mitigate and address all 3 current outstanding service issues, which would be the code 0, excessive vehicle movement, and the 90th percentile response time. What would be the financial cost to do this for option 1?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. You'll notice that there are 3 recommendations placed in there. One is for additional ambulance hours, and the second is to increase the supervisors. That was option 1 and option 2. Option 3 has been costed because we're putting it through the budget process, and with the 50% funding from the Ministry of Health, that would come in at around $500,000 to address these issues. But as I mentioned, we've taken this report and we are currently placing it through the budget process so that it can be duly considered.
Well, I would expect that if we don't start addressing these issues, that they're only going to increase, viewing our growth we've experienced over the last year and a half and the increase in intensity of housing. Would you agree that the cost to not consider increasing these staffing hours would cost more than what you just said it would if we did implement it?
I think one of the key aspects of the fact that we have this relationship with Medivh, as is a personal private, a private public initiative, is that we get this almost like an ambulance master plan every year, where we get given this analysis and we get given these recommendations. So we have to be guided by these recommendations. And yes, looking at the growth, not to mention the prospective growth of Chatham-Kent that we're seeing over the past few years, it is a matter that we felt should be brought to council for their information, and it should be addressed.
Thank you. I would agree. My third question is for, I think, Don McClellan. Really, it's kind of a personal interest of mine. I wondered if it was realistic to expect to see occupational therapists included as additional team members within the next year with the staff hour increase option, either at the wellness clinic level or dispatched in collaboration with paramedics, to example, a fall assessment call.
Thank you, Councillor Latimer, and through you, the Mayor. So coincidental timing, as we're actually walking through a new partnership with our community paramedic program and another agency called CBI Health, where we're actually looking at forming a mobile falls prevention team that will be deployed around falls related incidents in our community, either through our 911 system or through referrals from community partners, including a patient's primary care providers. So there is more information to come. That relationship and some of the developments are in its infancy that we're not ready to roll anything out yet, but we're having very encouraging conversations with our new partner, and there is more to come where we can actually serve that targeted population on a new level.
Thanks for the update on that, Dawn. I'm really pleased to hear that, because I think there's quantitative data to support the use of those paraprofessionals with the paramedics, and it's because it saves dollars across the whole system. So thanks very much, fellows.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. My questions were along the same line as Councillor Latimer. As I read through the report, clearly it speaks to the future forecasted demand. But I was wondering, with option 1, 2, and 3, does that catch us up, or how much does that future-proof our service?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Mr. Mayor, I will let Don answer that question as he's the author of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The current recommendations are essentially in order for us to catch up and get us to a new state, to be able to keep up with the demand, be able to facilitate proper support for our staff, and be able to serve the public based on our demand. As the sort of report states, there's an annual report where we continuously monitor that data. We also look at current local population health, as well as any census data, because Chatham's been very fortunate in the last couple of years where population is increasing, people are moving to the community, but we're working closely with our partners to understand where the gaps are in our system, where we can pivot resources, but more importantly, where we can prepare and ensure that we're being ready for any new surges in population shift, or more importantly, health system status changes in our population.
Okay. And you don't have to get into it too much clearly, but I have had conversations with not only longtime residents, but new people to the area. We are working on a plan, and we do have a plan in development to, like I said, future-proof this system, because increasing population that we're thankful to get here, as well as the aging population. Some folks are concerned that we might get caught flat-footed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're absolutely right, Councillor Thompson. And one of the reasons why we continue to work with our partners through our home safety strategy, and also the aspects of the master fire plan, is to try and make our provision more unified, so that we're all looking towards the root cause and the health aspects. And this involves a large number of partners. But one of the reasons why we brought this report forward is because we asked for an honest analysis from our expert providers. And it's a duty of ours to bring it to you so that you can see the state of the system and what kind of investments we may need to ensure that we can continue a level of service that would give comfort and confidence to not only the existing members of our community, but those who are considering moving to Chatham-Kent.
Okay. My final question, basically for my information, is when I'm talking to these people, I mean, I can tell them only so much. I'm not an expert in the field. Who do I put them in touch with if they have more questions about this important topic?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Through you, Mr. Mayor, you can put them through to myself, and we can channel them either to Donald's team, or we can come up with an answer between the various agencies. But we're always happy to take any questions and provide an answer from Fire and Emergency Services and from our colleagues at Medivy, who run our EMS service.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Firm believer that health is your greatest asset. So really glad to see we are taking steps to catch up and hopefully get ready for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just a quick question to I guess potentially be to the chief. So in the report, the forecast of demand for services basically scheduled to 2022. If we continue this trajectory of growth, then obviously these kind of the challenges that we're already identifying are going to be even increased. So in this approach, so are we and this could be something I'm confusing. So are we basically saying that this will be something that will be addressed in this current budget? Is this kind of when we'll revisit this as in this current budget, or is it going to be before that?
Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to let Don jump in here just after me, but right now this is the snapshot of what we got from last year's review, and I'm sure Don will be the first to say that COVID was an interesting time where it put a little bit of a strangeness in the system, because we saw changes in demand, which have now come back with a vengeance. Today we saw some real challenges for the availability of EMS services. So this is the prediction what we need. However, it's worth saying that in the years to come, we might see some changes across the province to the way that ambulance services are funded and provided. That was being discussed prior to COVID, and we may also see further developments and an increase in population beyond what is predicted. John, would you like to add anything to Councillor Sakatchi's answer?
Thank you, Chris Case, and through you, Mr. Mayor. If you can recall, back in 2018, Chief Case and myself had taken a report to council. At that time, we were experiencing some unpredicted surges in our system where we needed to address those issues immediately. This is, again, this report and these recommendations are around our current state. But it is also trying to plant the seed for future states. So, this information is, ebb and flow throughout the entire month, the entire year. Things can change, so we closely monitor our systems every day. We collaborate with municipal administration to ensure that everyone is kept up to date and informed, so that if there is ever a situation that changes, we have the ability to pivot. And some of that pivoting may require some information coming back to council, or other recommendations that may require some potential investment. So it is forever changing, and we do our very best to predict the future. But as things change, we may not always predict every element of the state of health and or population. But I guess to end it, we're always monitoring it to ensure that we know where we're at and where we're potentially going.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan, and I agree. And it's one thing to see it in a report, but I'm also privileged with my day job to see the amount of emails that come in from the CK EMS critical system status, and it's definitely concerning to see kind of just in general how much pressure there has been on the system. And then my last quick question, maybe we'll go to Mr. Quinton if he is on the line. Identifying the need in increasing the services, if that potentially is something that comes to light, is that based on the amount that you require for further provincial funding, or is it a different formula to kind of identify how much that would be increased if we were, as a municipality, had to increase the funding or the staffing hours?
Thanks, Mayor Caniff. Councillor Sakatchi, to answer your question, we always go through the assumption that at least down the road, perhaps not in the first year, but at least by year 2, that the province always does come through with the 50% funding that they commit to for ambulance services. Sometimes there is that 1-year delay when we add a new service. Like if we were adding addition to the current level of service. So the amount that the chief was indicating for the option number 3 is the 50% value. So it's and I think he rounded down a little bit to working on the budget currently, and the option 3 was the 50% of it was 597,000, so close to 1.2 million of actual costs. So we're going under the assumption that the province will follow through with funding 50% of any additions that we make.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quinn. That is actually helpful, and that is all my questions. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to item 20, community development.
Sorry. 20D, application for site plan control. Hycindia Farms North Inc., 20968 Coatsworth Road, community of Romney, West Kent.
Councillor Oche and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved.
I'm seconded.
Okay, Councillor Oche, you had a question?
I do, through you, your worship, to Bruce. Bruce, how far along are we on this?
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Bruce McAllister here, General Manager of Community Development. In terms of the project itself, Councillor Oche?
Yes, and just the fact that how far are the green, I guess I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. How far are the greenhouses or the bunk houses from the wind turbine there?
Okay, so thank you, Your Worship. They're well in their planning stages here, and this is why they wanted to bring the site plan forward. They've want to move forward with the actual greenhouse structures, as soon as possible for their own planning purposes. The greenhouse structures are over 200 meters plus from the closest turbines to the west on the neighboring property. One of the recommendations is that we not approve the locations of the bunkhouses tonight. Why they're a substantial distance away. We have had conversations with Kruger Energy and the greenhouse developer, and they both have certainly agreed to have a look at that. And once we get the noise modeling that was originally done on the turbines when they were permitted, compare that to where the bunkhouse locations would be. There may be some additional noise testing that has to be done as well. So the only thing when wind turbines were initially permitted, they had to be a certain distance from a neighboring lot line to ensure no impacts on agricultural operations. And they also had to do noise modeling to ensure they were far enough away from any existing residents or what they call noise receptors. So what we don't want to do is introduce new bunkhouses or noise receptors for two reasons. We don't want to necessarily put people within a harmful noise situation that it doesn't meet the noise modeling, and we don't want to impact the wind project's existing operational approvals either, right? So at this point, we're just suggesting that council approve the greenhouse, and we'll have a further dialogue about the location of the bunkhouses.
Okay, thank you. And through your worship, back to Bruce. Bruce, is there any kind of an agreement between Kruger and Hacienda as far as who takes responsibility if ice flies off the turbine blades into the greenhouse or bunkhouse?
No, there's no requirement for that or an agreement. I suppose if those two parties some sort of an agreement, but I guess I harken back to the idea that when wind turbines were originally permitted, the regulation was that they would be a minimum distance of the height of the turbine, which is the case here, to avoid those types of impacts, right? So the idea being you're not impacting a neighbor's right to put up agricultural structures. In addition to that, they are quite a substantial distance from their lot line as well, right? So they've almost doubled that distance.
Okay, well, I guess through your worship, my biggest problem with this is if something like this happens, will it be Kruger and the farm property owner the ones being sued over this? Or will Chatham-Kent be mixed up in this because we're allowing this to be built where it's being built, which to me, I know you said 200 meters, but it sure looks awfully close when you go out to that site. I just hope there's no legal problems with this is what I guess I'm saying, for either ourselves, the farmer that owns the property that the wind turbine is on, or Kruger itself. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. I noticed in the report there, they made mention that they don't plan on installing any internal grow lights. Is that correct?
That's correct for this project.
Okay. What happens if they decide to in the future?
Well, that is something we're still reviewing. As an update to that, we were waiting to see. There's currently an application that's been made to the Normal Farm Practices Board, Leamington light mitigation bylaw. We talked to the folks at Leamington earlier in the summer. So we were kind of waiting to determine what the outcome of that hearing was. Still waiting for a status update on when that hearing is going to happen. So fundamentally, at some point in the future, we probably will be bringing back a report that has some sort of a regulatory approach to light mitigation.
So reading between the lines there, right now there's nothing in place. If they decide, would they even have to ask us if they wanted to do that?
Right now, there is nothing in place for lighting. We've been working with some of these new proponents. If they are installing them, I can tell you there's one that is going to be installing lights, and they're currently putting in all the mitigation curtains right now. Hope to have actually a view of that facility in the near future, just to get a better idea of how it functions, inform any future regulations. So,
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Judy, it disappeared before I could vote.
Okay, we
Or-
think we need to reset that. Just hang on 1 second,
Okay.
please.
Thanks.
Okay, feel free now, Council.
Judy, it's
Good.
Councillor
Judy,
Latimer.
mine went again too.
Mine disappeared this time.
So did
too.
mine.
Okay, 1 second, we will reset it. We're just having some technical difficulties. 1 sec. Okay, it should work now, Council. Thank you. Still waiting for one more councillor to vote. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 15-2.
We'll move to item 21, infrastructure and engineering services.
21C, Wallaceburg Bridges and 3rd Street Bridge update.
Councillor C. McGregor, you had a question about the information report.
And actually, it's really not a question, Mayor Kenneth. It's more of a comment. I wanted to thank Thomas and his department for putting together this report. Throughout the summer, we've had work done on many bridges in Wallaceburg, which has spiked many conversations in our community with concerns over our bridges. And so I really wanted to thank them. And I know I'd asked that this report come forward so that we could share it with community members so they could actually understand the condition and the projected servicing date for all of our bridges in Wallaceburg. I know Councillor Bondi added on the 3rd Street Bridge, but I really just wanted to point out and appreciate the information that was provided to us so that we can share this with our community. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll move on to item 22, Finance, Budget, Information, Technology, and Transformation.
22A, Property Taxes Weekly Evacuation Zone.
Councillor Harrigan. Would you, and Councillor Oche, would you move this recommendation?
Yes, Mayor Kenneth, I'll move the recommendation. I just have a clarification question.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Councillor Harrigan.
Great, thank you. And through the mayor to Gord. Gord, I understand here that number 2 identifies possible further recommendations for the Wheatley evacuation zone. Can I ask why right now we are only talking about waiving interest and penalties and what those future recommendations could be to help support Wheatley residents?
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Councillor Harrigan, what our thought process here is that, you know, with the blast, there's been a lot of work since then, and particularly in the last week or two, there's the ongoing work of trying to determine the exact source of the explosion, and it's not until we eventually get to that final destination of finding that source, is that at that point in time we can see where that responsibility perhaps lies, and you know, I don't want to presume that it's a gas well, but if that's the indication, it may be that we're looking to the province to perhaps provide some type of relief package to the residents. That they have come through with a $2 million announcement a couple of weeks ago for the businesses in the area, but at this point in time, there's been no announcement for any residential assistance. But I think there is that possibility to explore once the actual source is determined. So we just want to wait a little while. That we knew that there was a November 1st due date coming up. So we wanted to get this report to council to stop the additions of any interest and penalties until, you know, we take the next month to figure out on the ground what's happening there.
Great. So just really from like a layperson perspective, this keeps the quote unquote accounts from having any added fees to them while we figure out what sort of supports we could have or put in place for the community.
Exactly. It's a pause till we know more information.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'll be asking in non-agenda, Mayor Kenneth, if we could get a public status update on where we are with the Wheatley evacuation project that the province is funding, but I think that's maybe more appropriate to say for non-agenda.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Gord. Mr. Quinton, would you tell these people to hold off on paying their taxes then? Is that kind of what this is saying?
Well, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I guess I'm not suggesting not to pay your taxes, but if you're unable to pay your taxes because of perhaps all the costs that you've had to endure throughout this emergency, that we're waiving the penalties for further notice until we get through this next stage, and you know, that eventually that people get back to their homes and the businesses in the downtown. And so we're wanting to put this pause in place while we await that. That, you know, it won't make any difference to any future assistance decision on whether people actually pay or not. That we would hope to get, you know, like I said, we're hoping that we'd be able to perhaps get the province to come up with some relief and assistance we know there's a lot of work to do in people's houses when they return to them. And so that's what we're focusing on right now once the source of the leak is confirmed over the next few weeks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote. Oh, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Sorry, I might have missed the beginning of some of this conversation. Is there a way, a method that we can relieve taxes? And again, sorry, this may have been asked because I glitched out because we're, online still. Can we relieve taxes? Like, can we say, Gord, can we say, well, since the explosion, from that time on, that there are no property taxes, because property taxes typically, I think most people feel, are not in lieu of, but you pay property taxes in order to receive services. If you're not allowed to live in your home, well, you're not exactly receiving the services. So is that a possible thing to do? Because I personally think if we can, we should, because it's not going to affect, the budget of the municipality that much. It will affect it, of course, but I would think that most of council might agree that if we can allow for some sort of an allowance, that we're not going to charge property taxes for businesses or residential properties from the time of the incident until time of resolution, which we don't know when that will ever be. I would think that's fair. I would feel, if I was one of these people paying property taxes, I like the idea of no interest or penalties, and that's nice, but is there a way to actually relieve taxes because people aren't able to access their home or business, and they're certainly not able to access any services? Or I don't know if that's legally even available, but if it is, I would suggest that's maybe a course of action.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So, Councillor Bondi, first about receiving services, there are, of course, they're receiving a lot of services, not directly in front of their house right now, but of course we've spent, we're probably approaching about $2 million of expenditures on the Wheatley disaster to date. And there's lots of services being received from both our social program group that's assisting and finding housing. There's the engineering group that's working on the lake. So in fact, there's lots of services. In fact, like I say, about $2 million of additional cost to the municipality that was unbudgeted to date. I think the issue that I'm trying to address in number 2 is who is ultimately responsible to provide that relief, and whether that's potentially the province, or perhaps it's a private insurance issue. We would rather just put a pause and wait a couple months. I think we'll be finding the more about the source of the gas leak very, very soon. And at that point in time, if it is a provincial responsibility, I would rather have the province be coming up with a relief plan, financial relief plan, than having the taxpayers of Chatham-Kent have that impact. As indicated in the report, a full year of taxes for all the properties, and for 2021, a full year of taxes was close to 178,000 for all the properties that are in the evacuation zone. So you're correct; it may not be a huge amount if that was waived for 3 months or 6 months. But again, as we're up to $2 million of expenditures so far, I'd rather wait a little bit longer and see if that becomes a provincial responsibility.
And through you, Mayor Kenneth Gord, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean that they're, that the people of Wheatley, excuse me, are not receiving services. I know they're receiving a lot of services they didn't want to receive, you know.
Exactly.
Nobody wants like fire and police and, you know, all this sort of engineering. I'm sure they'd rather not have these services. So excuse me. So I do understand that. And thank you for that clarification. What I was asking was, is there, and again, I know there's through the Municipal Act and in other legislation that sometimes we're not, as a municipality, allowed to relieve property taxes. And I think in this case, and as you had mentioned, perhaps this is maybe a provincial obligation, but as we seem to kick the ball back and forth from the municipality of the province back to the municipality of the province, it'll all get sorted out eventually. But in the meantime, I was hoping that maybe you could provide the residents and business owners and commercial property owners of Wheatley some sort of, I don't like the word comfort, but I'll have to use it because I can't think of anything else. Some comfort in that perhaps they may not be on the hook for months and months of property taxes in places where they're not able to occupy, run their business. You know, that I think would fall on welcome ears. That, you know, if I was one of these people and I was, you know, relieved of penalties, well, that's nice, but, you know, to be paying property taxes when I'm not putting out the garbage, I'm not using the sewers, you know, blah, blah, blah. You understand where I'm going, Gord, obviously. So I think, and I know that tonight you can't provide any assurance of that, but is there the possibility that we can have an alleviation of those property taxes? That was really my question. And again, I appreciate your clarification that there's been a lot of very good and a lot of, I think a lot of effort from the municipality and from the province. You know, Premier Ford was there and he seemed to be very well received. I hope he had his vaccination card with him to, you know, approach these places. But so there has been some efforts there, but I think really the bottom line is that the homeowners, the commercial business owners are going to be thinking, hey, you know, can you please relieve our property taxes for this time, which we don't know. It's undetermined how long that will be. And my question to you, Gord, is can we? I don't know if we can legally as a municipality. So that is the question.
Thank you for the clarification. So yes, as the treasurer of the municipality, I can waive taxes. My recommendation is to wait another few weeks because we think we're at a crucial part of the discovery. And so at this point, I'm not recommending it. I'm recommending that we wait for a few more weeks for that discovery to continue and make the decision perhaps at a November or December council meeting rather than tonight.
Now, Gord, I wouldn't suggest that we make that decision tonight either, but when you suggest that we should wait a couple of weeks or maybe a month or so, why? If we determine where the leak came from, would that put more pressure on the province to step up and maybe cover those taxes and remunerate the municipality? So my question is, why would we want to wait to do that? Just from the homeowner's point of view, they don't care where the money's going to come from. They just hope it doesn't come from their pocket, right? So why? And I'm not trying to bury a minute. I'm just asking, like, why would we want to wait to relieve these taxes upon determination of where the gas leak comes from?
So, I appreciate the question. I think part of this may venture into legal issues, and Dave, feel free to comment if you think so. But you know, there is, the idea is that it is a provincial responsibility to manage the capping of gas wells that were, you know, operational years ago to providing gas. That's under provincial legislation, and and there's no assurances that the province would reimburse the municipality for us making a decision tonight to waive taxes. I'd like the, you know, we're getting down the road to a program that's not being discussed until the source is found, but we would like to then work with the province and try to figure out a program of relief to the residents that would include also reimbursing for the property taxes, along with, you know, any cleanup to their properties, or you know, disaster restoration companies, or whatever needs to be done in the future as they return to their homes and have you know, spoiled food in their fridges and things like that to deal with in the end. So we want to so you're correct. We could waive taxes right now, but for now we're recommending to just hold off until that source is confirmed. If the source can't be confirmed, we might have another recommendation that we would bring to council at a later date.
I think we can summarize the discussion by just saying it's prudent to wait another few weeks to look to see where the funding, if there's potential funding coming from another source to cover that, but we will be dealing with it sometime in the near future. All right, seeing no other questions. We'll put it to vote.
Council, it looks like somebody has stopped the vote again, so we'll have to relaunch it. Okay, Council, go ahead.
Judy, it's Marjorie. It seems to go really quickly.
What do you mean? Everybody
Like when-
voting?
Yeah, it's fast. By the time you touch it, it's off the screen. So maybe there's a problem.
No. I think that's what's happened is it goes off the screen when somebody hits stop or end poll. So right now it's still on the screen and it motion passes 17-1. But I think what's happening is somebody is clicking end it, and that's why it's clicking off. So no worries. We have our IT staff here that's able to help us. So so that motion passes 17-1.
We'll move on to the next one. Judy?
Okay. 22E, motion by Councillor Sakachi, re-grant to the Blenheim Senior Centre 2022 Senior Fair.
Councillor Scotchy? If you're speaking, Councillor Scotchy, you're on mute.
Sorry, Mayor Caniff, I apologize. Madam Clerk, it's okay just to read the portion that's currently on the screen. Is that okay?
If you have an amendment, you can do it all right now.
So there, I guess out of respect to Councillor Latimer did have an amendment that I will read this one and I will allow her to bring it forward. And it is something that it is a friendly amendment. So I'll just read this current one, that a one-time $3,000 grant be given to the Blenheim Senior Center for their 2022 Senior Fair, funds to come from the unused portion of the Together CK grant programs.
So does Councillor Latimer have an adjustment to that, or is she seconding it?
Correct, Mayor Caniff. She has an amendment that she approached me about, and due to the matter of she's put a lot of her and her team's put a lot of work into this process. I feel it's beneficial that she brings the amendment forward.
All right, so
herself.
Councillor Latimer, can you give us the amendment and on the assumption? Well, Councillor Scotchy is saying it's a friendly one, so how does this change?
Well, the part that's changed in the motion isn't actually up on the screen. It was actually the initial wording that I asked to be considered a change. Is whereas the original funds allocated to the 2022 Chatham-Kent Senior Expo and Achievement Awards, historically held in Blenheim, has been redistributed to the 2022 Chatham-Kent Celebration of Older Adults to be held in Chatham. And that was just the initial part of the motion, and it's not on the screen. Judy, I did send it in.
Yes, Councillor Latimer, whenever we do notice of motions, the whereases aren't part of the motion. They're just part of the reason why. So we have that noted that was the change, and we'll be voting on what's on the screen now.
Okay, Councillor Scott, do you have any comments?
Yeah, as long as the changes will be reflected in the summary of the meeting, that there's no real comments, just that this was obviously an event that has been in South Kent for quite some time, and just looking for some bridge funding for their first year, just to ensure that the senior fair can still transpire.
Okay, don't see any questions. We can put it to vote.
Still waiting for one more councillor. Okay, all votes are in. 16-1, it passes. Mr. Mayor, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm telling him he's on mute. It's me. So we're now to notice of motion. Councillor Oche, Councillor Crew, and Councillor Pinsino have them. So first up is Councillor Oche.
Thank you, Worship. I, Councillor Mark Oche, will bring forward the following motion at our next council meeting. Whereas the provincial government has a mask mandate, and whereas CK has one as well, I ask that our mask mandate bylaw be removed. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Crew.
Mine's a little longer. I, Councillor Marjorie Crew, hereby provide notice that I'll bring forward the following motion at the November 8th, 2021 council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas core grant programs goal was to provide financial support to organizations that provide valued services and support to our community that complement those provided by the municipality. And whereas local historical societies and concert bands may cease operations if they do not receive 50% of their annual operating costs from the municipality. Therefore, I, Councillor Marjorie Crew, move that the funds from the core grant program in the amount of $347,000 be allocated to support the following historical societies and concert bands at 50% of their annual operating costs based on their 2021 budgets, and that the annual increase of 1% be provided upon receipt of financial statements from the previous year, a budget for the current year, and business plan. The following organizations: Buxton Historical Society, Wallaceburg and District Historical Society, Chatham-Kent Black Historical Society, Chatham Concert Band, and Wallaceburg Concert Band. And whereas Chatham-Kent is an age-friendly community, the following youth centers also receive an allocation representing 20%, same as senior centers, of their annual operating costs based on their 2021 budgets, and that the annual increase of 1% be provided upon financial statements from the previous year, a budget for the current year, and a business plan. The Blenheim Youth Center, Dresden Youth Center, Tilbury Youth Center. And we don't have the determined status of Tilbury yet. And further, that any remaining funds be reallocated to the Together CK Community Projects Program. And there's a chart there that I will submit with all the numbers. I'm not going to read them all out. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Worship. I, Councillor Steve Pincinel, give notice that I will bring the following notice of motion to the next council meeting, November 8th of 2021. Whereas Chatham-Kent firefighters are required to perform tiered medical response as part of their job description, and whereas Chatham-Kent paramedics are funded to cover the cost of their COVID testing for employees who are not getting vaccinated, and whereas the Ford government has announced its plan to lift the COVID restrictions as soon as January 17th of 2022, be it resolved that Chatham-Kent covers the cost of the COVID testing for firefighters through the Safe Restart Fund from the provincial government, if allowed, or any appropriate reserve that administration suggests if it's not allowed. Thank you.
Judy, I've just lost my agenda. My screen just went blank on the computer I had it on.
Okay, no problem. On to closed session reports. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. Closed session report for Monday, October 18th. All members of council were present. Council received information on educating or training the members with regard to Fire Master Plan, Section 239, 3.1 of the Municipal Act. Closed session report for Monday, October 25th. Councilors absent were Oche, Finn, and McGrail. Council directed administration on personal matters about identifiable individuals with regards to Chief Administrative Officer interviews, Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act, and council closed session report for Monday, October 25th, later in the afternoon. All members of council were present. Council directed administration on proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to Intrepid General offer to purchase, Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act, and council received information on litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege with regard to 19981 Charing Cross Road and 19325 Gore Road, Section 239(2)E and F of the Municipal Act, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with regard to tree policy, Section 239(2)F of the Municipal Act. And those reports are so moved, Mayor Kenneth.
And Councillor Oche, can you second that, please?
You certainly can. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. Moving on to approval of communication items. Mr. Mayor, we have Councillor Latimer who have 2 items that she would like to pull.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, which items would you like to pull?
I just had 2 items, actually 2B, their correspondence received, the draft document Municipal Democracy Index. I wondered if that would be provided to our new DEI coordinator, Rebecca Haskell-Thomas, for her comment and input with regard to our benchmarks in comparison to our Ontario neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess from the clerk's perspective, the clerk's office helped communicate with Armstrong Strategy Group on some of the statistics that they were looking for. And so it was information that was provided and considered as good news when it came back when we became the 7th, rated 7th highest. But we're happy to share that with Ms. Haskell when she begins.
That'd be great. And the second item I have was 3D, the resolution from the municipality of Leamington with regard to long-term care homes, asking the provincial government to implement higher standards of care and increased funding to meet those higher standards, to encourage the federal government to increase federal health care funding dedicated to long-term care, and for the FCM to develop policy and an advocacy position on enhanced federal support for long-term care. I wondered if we could support that resolution.
Can I get a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Oche seconded. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Latimer and Councillor Scott, you're going to get you move the remaining information package.
So moved.
Seconded, Mayor Caniff.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Next up, non-agenda business. Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I'm just wondering if Don or the team could provide a public update as to where we are with our Wheatley project. I know that there are some people who are getting email updates, but think that providing a more public update is necessary on where the progress has been with trying to find the source.
Thank you, Worship. I'll start and might invite my colleagues, in particular Mr. Kelly, to join in if he has some additional information to add. During the last week, there was a number of investigative steps taking place on the site of the explosion. There was a number of test holes drilled. They were taking gas samplings. They were looking at a variety of different factors to try and identify the source of the leak. We actually have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning with the provincial government and some of the engineering staff to try and get an update. But all of the signs last week were pointing to the source of the explosion to be an abandoned gas well. That's what we had suspected for some time, but we're hoping to see a confirmation of that. The other important point is that along with that confirmation is we can start taking some tangible steps to try and address the problem. So we'll have more information to report tomorrow, but that's the work that was underway. Right now, the confirmatory testing of the gas that had been sent to the University of Windsor laboratory. I'm not sure if those test results have been returned to us yet. We might get that information as early as tomorrow if we haven't already received it. And with that information, they'll be looking at what options exist for remediation or mitigation of the gas, the hydrogen sulfide gas, or any other risks that we had within the community. And the intent all along is to try to make sure that our community is going to be safe, but there's a number of other questions that we also need to ask. It's, is it safe to build on certain sites? Is it safe to change the size of the evacuation center? As recently as Friday of last week, when they were still doing the testing, on a daily basis, we were reviewing the size of that evacuation zone with the expert consultants, and they were still confirming that the current evacuation zone is exactly what it should be. And given the other activities that are being done on the property, they still think that's the appropriate size of the evacuation zone. So hopefully more information this week, and along with that, we'd be in a position to report back not only to our community, but certainly to council about what options exist, what the cost and the timing of those options would be. Mr. Kelly or Mr. Case, do you have any, or Chief Case, do you have any additional information to add?
Thank you, Don. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that last week we were able to release the provincial hazmat team who've been on site since the night of the explosion. And we continue to have Chatham-Kent firefighters working around the clock to provide a response should an emergency occur. But we are very much working with the engineers on site, very much working with the experts who are from Ontario and Alberta, and mainly keeping the site safe, especially for those who are living in the immediate area. I think my friend and colleague, Mr. Kelly's probably got a lot more information to add on.
Thank you, Chief Case. Actually, I don't. I think you've both done a great job of summarizing where we're at. And there are several options that we're going to look at as far as next steps. The technical team is diving into that tomorrow based on all the data that has been acquired and to make recommendations from there. So that's what we're at in the process. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, was there any additional information that any specific questions or?
No, thank you for the update to team. I know there are many people in the community of Wheatley, both in and out of the evacuation site, that are looking forward to what the next steps may bring when we identify that source.
Thanks. I should provide another brief update. There are 2 additional streams of financial assistance that are being worked on, and we're hoping to get additional information on those in the coming days as well. Bruce McAllister and Stuart McFadden have been working with the provincial government on distribution of approximately $2 million in relief that has been announced by the provincial government to provide support to business owners who have been unable to access their properties or run their businesses. They were getting down to the short strokes in terms of being able to release that money. It was supposed to be looking at 2 different components. One is sort of an immediate relief to put cash in people's hands because it's recognized they have not had revenues coming in, or at least those have been restricted over the past several weeks since the explosion. But then there'd also be some funds set aside to help people with the getting back into their businesses and getting them reopened. April and I are going to be in a meeting with the provincial government in the next, I believe if it's not tomorrow, it'll be the next day, but looking at an expanded relief program for the residents that have been evacuated as well. So the province is stepping up to trying to get approvals as quickly as possible. There is a recognition that people have been, they've suffered a lot of hardship, and there needs to be a way to try and provide some support for them. So the province has been stepping up in that regard as well. April, is there anything else you'd like to add on the support to the individual folks, or Bruce on the businesses?
I don't, I think you summed it up nicely, Don. I think the province, we've provided as much information to the province that we have regarding all of the households that are currently evacuated. And we will continue to do so. We are distributing emergency assistance funds directly to households. We are well over $100,000 that we have been able to distribute to residents for those immediate needs until that relief package from the province is announced. Other than that, that's all I've got today. Don, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Latimer.
Thank you very much, I noticed on CTV this morning that nearby London is going to have a Santa Claus parade. And I know things have been in a constant state of flux with the provincial government and the recent announcement and changes coming to the COVID protocol. So I was wondering, where does that leave the municipality here in Chatham-Kent as far as Santa Claus parades? Are they on, or can they be off? What's the deal?
Your worship, I'll take a first cut at that. So stay with me, it's rather convoluted. So 3 different parts. The first part is there was an announcement by the provincial government on Friday. There was no direct information that we received on parades. The information that's still posted on the website is that stage 3, which we're currently in, the limit for an outdoor event such as a parade is 100 people. Part of the confusion is that there are other types of events like fairs where the capacity for those outdoor events is much higher than 100 people. And some of the contributing factors that need to be considered when they're setting the limitations on people is, can you confirm that people are going to be distanced within 2 meters? Can you ensure that there's proof of vaccination? Those are 2 critical pieces that it's more difficult to do in a parade than it is in perhaps something where you have an entrance and an exit where you can confirm the number of people in a certain area. But that's not a perfect science. And I recognize some people look at them and scratch their heads and say, why can't I do this? So we've been trying to work with event organizers to try and look at what other types of things could be recommended, like a reverse parade. How our friends in London are able to make an announcement, I'm not sure, because I know that there's other communities that have canceled. But Councillor Thompson, you've shared that with us. We will follow up with the City of London tomorrow, and we'll see if they have any additional information that we can consider so we can support events in our community. 2 other pieces. One is that the provincial announcements and the move forward to try and reduce the number of restrictions or limitations related to COVID are directly tied to the ongoing monitoring of COVID-19 indicators. So things like the number of admissions to the ICUs, the testing for positivity, the weekly incident rates. And something we're probably more familiar with in Chatham-Kent is our vaccination rates or our coverage. If the rates continue to move in a negative direction, then the restrictions will continue to be in place or could be increased. And if they are, moving in a more positive direction, then we're going to probably see a whole lot more leniency. Chatham-Kent still has, if not the lowest rate of vaccination in the province, one of the lowest. And we were the top in the country back in May, early June, and then we stagnated. And so if people want to have parades and so on, then what I'm going to encourage people to do is continue to try and get vaccinated, because the faster we move in that direction, the faster we're going to be in a position for a community to encourage more quickly to open up and reduce restrictions. The last piece is, as it relates to parades, there is another important component, and this may be part of what London is differentiating on. When you have a parade, you need to have a police presence to close off streets, direct civilians and traffic. Those, and when you have a parade, the roads are still open. The only people that really under the Highway Traffic Act that can do that are either auxiliary police or regular officers. Chief Khan reported on the 24th of September that all of the auxiliary police officer training for them to be sort of to have their ongoing training to get reinstated on an annual basis that had been put on hold by the provincial government because of COVID restrictions, and that he did not believe that Chatham-Kent Police Services had sufficient capacity to provide all of the required policing. We did explore use of volunteers, using our public works staff and so on. I was informed by the chief that that was not permitted under the Highway Traffic Act, and that there'd be significant concerns if that was to take place. I've written to Chief Khan again and asked for any further updates on that front, whether he can look at any increased capacity, but that's the current update we have. So apologies for the long-winded solution, but it's complicated. But I want to assure the public that we want to have the events coming back, and if the restrictions allow for it, we will do everything possible to provide support for it. And things like reverse parades and so on were run last year, and they could run this year, and they offer us some opportunity to celebrate and as a community.
I appreciate that, Don. But at the same time, there definitely seems to be a disconnect here. And I also appreciate that, the media, especially on a quick story, doesn't always get into the nitty gritty. But from the sounds of it, London's running just an ordinary, every day, every other year parade through the streets of downtown London. And I have residents, and I know everybody, as staff and councillors as well, getting really frustrated to see communities like London pulling off a parade in just 2 weeks' time, and then we're unable to for reasons. So I'm looking forward to a follow-up tomorrow from what you can figure out from London, because it's people are getting frustrated.
So we're sharing the pain, Councillor Thompson, and if we can find a way to make it work, we will. But that's the information we had tonight is what I shared with you. So
okay,
we'll follow up with London tomorrow. Thank you.
Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Oche.
Thank you. I think my question is for Dr. Redike. Late last week, the provincial government opened a new call for applications to develop long-term care homes in response to the province's commitment to deliver 32,000 new beds over the next 10 years. So I wondered where we were in communication with our MPP, interested in building or redeveloping long-term care homes, our willingness as a municipality to support them in their application. These applications are to be submitted as soon as possible, and they'll be considered in order of submission. So I wondered if Dr. Redike could comment or offer an update.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I too, Councillor Latimer, saw that announcement from last week, and certainly as we look at all of the details with that, I can make some calls and reach out to our local MPP and see if he has any more information, and then we can do a reach out to a number of our operators and see if any of them are interested in increasing long-term care beds here locally. And then I can update council once I make those calls. So happy to do that and see where we are with that.
Thank you, April. I wondered if we could include economic development as well, because there may be someone, not just the current operators, but other not-for-profit agencies that may be interested in partnering with either with other not-for-profit agencies or with a for-profit agency. Just I'm trying to consider all angles here, because I think a lot of people are most anxious, especially in the West End of our community, that this issue be attended to as diligently as possible. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you. And I'll reach out to Bruce as well. Thanks, Councillor Latimer.
Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm kind of going back to what Councillor Harrigan was speaking on as far as Wheatley. A lot of new news was brought up by Dr. Reedike and also Dawn. These are the kind of things that I would like to see in communications to the people of Wheatley, not just the ones evacuated, but of course them as well, for sure. But I'm hearing complaints all the time for the lack of communication. I know Melissa and I have really stressed the fact that they want to be communicated to, they want to know what's going on. And I'm hoping we can do more updates than what we have been doing. I know they would like it every day if possible. And I'm not seeing that happening, and I'm hearing about it quite a bit. So I'm hoping that we can do this starting after tomorrow's meeting with the provincial government. And I know we stressed as well, all of us did, to the provincial government about the communication, and they seem to be lacking in the communications as well. And I know the residents of Wheatley would also like to know or hear more from the actual experts brought in to work on this, whether it's done through the province or through us. But can we please get more communication out to these people? Thank you.
Councillor Bondi, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mary Caniff. A couple of things too. Number one, do we have I'm sure we have some sort of a plan, but could we maybe get a report back from administration on our homeless strategy in regard to a homeless shelter? Are we going to build a homeless shelter? Are we not going to build a homeless shelter? Are we going to stay with the travel lodge, which doesn't seem to be feasible in the long term? But many residents, I'm sure a lot of Ward 6 people are hearing about this, or Ward 6 councillors, sorry. What are we doing? Are we going to build a homeless shelter? Are we not going to build a homeless shelter? Are we going to continue to use motels and hotels? So if we could have some sort of feedback on that, that would allow us to provide answers to questions that we get, because people are concerned about the homeless crisis. And we frankly don't really have any answers as to any sort of solutions that we're talking about. I know there's lots of stuff in the works and people are working hard. So if we could just get an update back to council on that, that would be appreciated. Number two would be the status of Dolson, the former Anglican church on Dolson, which was demolished to accommodate for a housing development. The church was demolished a long time ago, and there seems to be zero activity. And the residents that I've heard from are wondering effectively, what is the status? There seems to be a pause. So if we could be provided with an update on what's going on there, that would be great. Those two things, if I could just, and again, they don't have to come back through council, they can just come back. Well, maybe through, most of council might want to be informed of that, but in any event, if we could just get some sort of update on what are we doing with our homeless strategy and Dolson Avenue. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I tried to lower my hand, but it's not allowing me. Some of my questions and concerns have been addressed by Councillor Thompson, so I have no further comments. Thank you.
All right, we're done with non-agenda business. We'll go on to reading of the bylaws, first and second reading. Councillor Solomon and Councillor Pinsino.
Move.
Can I get you-
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. The third and final reading, Councillor Foss and Councillor Kirkwood White.
So move, Your Worship.
And seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Resolution of council in closed session adjournment. Councillor Hall and then Councillor C. McGregor. I'll get you to close it out this time.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, November 8th, 2021, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
And thank you. I'm happy to second that.
Anyone opposed to closing the meeting at 7:50 p.m.? Going once, going twice. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.